Right, we're on. Fuck's sake, look at me, I'm not fucking one of these fucking Star Trek dudes. Joined the Star Trek crew. Was it the day, so that thing, well, gravity. Bend the Oceans is real, because I've seen Star Trek and I'm wearing one of the things. So anyhow, a wee bit of a disclaimer. I'm probably going to be ripping the piss out of like cult, religious mantras, buzzwords, phrases, beliefs. I'm in no way, shape or form trying to influence your thoughts with my ridiculing. It's just that it deserves ridicule because it is absolutely absurd, bonkers lunacy. The things that people believe in and run about professing it to be scientific. So I probably will rip the piss a wee bit, but as I say, that's not to try and sway anybody. That's just because that's who I am. Absurd things, life in general, everything, I like to take the piss out of. Not myself though. I'm beyond having the piss ripped out of me. I'm way above that. I'm nearly perfect. I promise. Somebody told me that anyway. So, hail all Trekkie, fellow Treks, and all that stuff. So, I spoke about this so many times before, but as I say, the whole thing for me, you know, taking a step away from funniness and whatever else, one of the main things of the bullshit, manipulation, propaganda is repetition of it. So, you know, I don't just talk about one thing once and then leave it when it's buried in the YouTube backlog. You know, I like to keep bringing it to the forefront so that we can have a wee prod at it, rub some salt in the wounds, poke at it for a wee while and watch them dance. You know, because that's the game, that's how this works. You have to keep repeating over and over and over, you know, because if you don't, it just looks to the onlooker like, you know, their side has won, because you've got to remember in their mind it's a fight, it's a dichotomy. You know, it's one thing against another thing and there must be battle. So, for me, I just like to bring it back up and have a wee look at it again. But at the same time, just to show people the process that somebody like myself goes through when I'm looking at what's professed to me as scientific concepts of, you know, imaginary forces that achieve all sorts of fantastical things, including bendy oceans, including, you know, pressurized environments adjacent to vacuums, you know, including direction, weight, these types of things, and how we understand these things to be. So the main thing, that one of the biggest binding aspect of their fantasy globe concept is what we call gravity. Now, this word they use to apply it to pretty much everything. You know, if you point out a demonstrable fact to them, they'll just use the word gravity. So you always try and needle them and ask them to define what they're talking about when they're using this mantric statement, this buzzword, gravity, and what it actually is, what's its mechanism, what's its function, how does it, what are the mechanistic, you know, interactions between this conceptual notion and three-dimensional tangible objects and real world, real life situations. And you get all sorts of conflicting statements and whatever else put forth to you. So I thought, well, let's have a wee look at it again, and we'll try and understand where they're coming from. What else was I going to say about it again? I can't remember now. It's gone. Anyhow, how we are doing, people? Wait a minute. It's saying it's disconnected. What's going on? Am I disconnected? No. You're back. Well, so, you know, as I said before, when we're talking about mechanisms of motion, direction, weight through resistance, there has to be some components to these things. We have to understand mechanically what's actually going on. So if we're talking about, you know, we could be talking about a flow, for instance, like FPV Angel sent me a video. I've been discussing this with Marty as well about capacitors and capacitance. you know, some sort of electrical type flow that would denote direction, you know. And I've also brought up the aspects of motion, which would be, you know, something that could define direction, that which also would give things, you know, the resistance they require to give them weight, because the mass of any object is just has mass, volume, but in order for it to have weight, it must have something to resist it. So you need something else coming into contact with it in order to give it something that, you know, an object, what we would call weight. So there's various different, you know, concepts or ideas about what's actually going on. But for me, predominantly, what I'm focusing on is questioning the globe model and how they use the word gravity. Because, you know, for me, all I understand gravity to be is a word that describes, or, you know, is attached to falling. Like an object that you drop and it falls to earth. That's falling in my vocabulary. Something falls. They want to interchange that word with gravity. Oh, it's coming towards the earth because gravity did it. So as I've pointed out before, you know, I probably don't have to say this because I'll bring it up as we go through. I'm just going to have a wee look at how they define what they're talking about when they say gravity and how they're using it. So, as I say, it's massive to their concept, because, you know, how else are you going to get people to believe that, you know, antipode to them, there's people standing with their feet to their feet, and that oceans and rivers and lakes are all bending, and there's things upside down to your position, clinging to the surface of a spheroid. You need something magical because it's absolutely absurd. Totally and utterly, total and utter lunacy. People know these things. People know that gradients and stuff like that, you know, you understand it. You understand the geometry of slopes and spheres. You know that you can't get things to stick to spheres. You know that water doesn't bend around it and stick to it. So they've got to come up with sophistry. They've got to come up with language-based nonsense to bamboozle you. And as I've also pointed out, they utilise imagery, you know, through the TV screen, while they're using their mantric fucking nonsense to convince the gullible that that's where they live. You live on an absurdity. Anywho, hello everybody. Who we got? P900 Cool Picks, how are you? Cheris Rosen, Beyond Belief, Boris Chops, Tony Dixon, Level Earth Observer, how you doing? Brandon Cook, Squirrel Sniper, FPV Angel, Mr. Cheswick, Matthew Wayne Scattergood, Selin Alien, Chris Rosen, Tracy Storia, Flat Chord Music, Bloody Sticker and Water, Eye Level Awakening, One Conscience, oops, gone too fast now. X-Crate 200, TP in a Tree, Baron Bronskevich, oh, shit, Steve Atomic, Sigma, Cold Steel Truth, Andy W, Gavin Fly, Jacqua, Ryan Vincent, what's going on? David Marks Lobo, ER Jambo, Pied Piper, Newt 11, XP Party Pack, how you doing? Richard Burke, Michael Can, fucking what's jumping about, what's going on here? Midnight Gardener, the Shaman Anarchist, Anarchist. People like to come up with names that fucking tongue tie you. Joey P, Mr. Golden V, Carol Shutt, how you doing? Grissu, right, hello everybody, how are we? Right, wait a minute. Right. So gravity, everybody's heard it. And this, you know, I'm almost finished with the house, so I'm going to be back active again, back at the unis and stuff, and this is going to be one of the first things that I'm going with them. I want to get an understanding and a discussion with these quackademics about the word gravity, what their relationship is to it, and what they think it actually is. So, let me just finish this. Right. I don't need that. How to grout a wood look plank porcelain tile. Fucking hate grouting. I don't mind tiling, but see grouting. Right, anyhow. What have I lost here? Lost something. Right, that's where I'm at. Right, so hello everybody. Hope you're all well. Volume's a bit low. Can it be? Shouldn't it be? Just turn it up a bit. Should be alright. Anyhow. Let me see here. So what have I started with? Screen share. So, type in how gravity works. You know, I've typed a few different things in, so let's have a wee look-see, shall we? We've all seen this before. So this is the... Again, you know, you've got different concepts of gravity. You've got the mass attracting mass bollocks. We'll get to that. And then you've got this warping and bending of space-time. So space, which isn't a thing, it has no properties. And time, which is not a thing either. But they're representing it. This is, you know, this is the false equivalencies that they use continually. It's always a false equivalence, and the reason that they utilise these things is to give you the image, because human beings seem to adapt to a concept a lot easier and take it on board when they have some sort of image that they can represent it with. So this is a false equivalence. Again, you know, this guy here is obviously displaying the warping Einsteinians, warping and bending of space-time. Space is doesn't have any properties. You can't bring me a measure of space or time, right? Just concepts. So this guy is using some sort of spandex to represent nothingness, right?
The explanation for gravity is that matter bends space. And so you put mass in a place in space, it warps space-time. And
see, if they were postulating something like an ether, you know, people have heard the word ether, like some sort of base material or field or something that supports everything else, then fair enough. I could probably have a better discussion about something like that. It's much more feasible than you know, them just calling it space-time. Because, you know, how do you define space-time? So if we're talking about, you know, objects occupying some sort of fabric, then of course it's going to distort the fabric, because two objects cannot, you know, exist in the same place, right? Take up the same space. Right? So something would have to give, pretty much like imagine water. When you go into the water, you displace the water because the water can't occupy the same space that your body takes up. So you displace the water, and you could say that the water's now contorted and forming around your shape, you know, submerged in the water. I don't mean the topography underneath being displayed on the surface of water before the globe Tardian clowns start, right? So if we're talking about something like that, then that's much more feasible, because we can deduce, we can have a look at actual reality and see these things and understand them. But it would still be conceptual, because you're talking about something that we don't understand. We're just guessing. Again, this has been formulated because there's a necessity to tell people that we're living on a globe, and then there's a necessity to explain why everything sticks to this globe. But it's just bullshit. This is why we've got the false equivalencies.
Objects are not feeling a force of gravity, they're just following the natural curvature. And so this is a sheet of Lycra. Where do you get this?
So as I say, you can visualise that like when you pull the plug on your drain. You know, this comes into the realms of reality when we're talking about these things, because we know, as I've pointed out so many times before, motion, the laws of motion, anything being moved requires a variance in pressure. So you either need to lower the pressure, surrounding an object, or increase the pressure by applying some pressure to it, or, as I say, reducing a pressure, and you get motion happening. Forget what I was going to say about that. Anyway.
Bike shorts. No, there's literally a spandex.com.
Aye, I was talking about the flow, sorry. So in a case like that, when you pull the plug in your bathtub or whatever, you know that it's being pushed by the air pressure, and it flows in that particular direction, and anything that's in that vicinity will be carried along by the pressure of the rushing water. So
you can get a sheet like this if you buy the sale stuff, so you don't care what it looks like, right? For like $20, maybe less, depending on the and so you put matter and it warps space-time. And so if I have another object, it also warps space-time. They feel that and they're attracted to it.
No, I mean, that might. This is what I'm saying about these gullible peoples. And he's just trying to pass it off. So we're not getting anything here. We're getting a false equivalence of a concept, which is total fucking lunacy, right? Because I don't hear any heliocentrist proposing that we're, sitting on a fabric like lycra or spandex. So that's just utter rubbish. How does gravity work? Here we go. Here's another. Let's see. How does gravity work? What's this one? Oh.
In this episode, I'm going to explain the mechanism behind how gravity works. Not that
That's interesting. The mechanism. That's what I've been searching for. So when we talk about mechanism, we're talking about analog, actual three-dimensional reality, where we have one surface impressing upon another surface, something connected to something else, where we understand motion. So when we're talking about mechanics, like an engine for talking sake, every aspect of the engine is connected to one other part, and it's a continuation, a perpetual movement that's transferred from one to the other. And that's how we achieve motion. So it'll be very interesting to see what this guy's got in regards to mechanistic type interactions. I'm really intrigued here.
Works, not demonstrating its effects on stuff. I am actually going to show you the mechanism behind why two objects are attracted.
That's what I'm talking about. This is mechanistic, mechanisms, motion. We have a lever here pressing on another lever to make it move. And you would need some sort of other lever to make that move, and yada, yada, yada. You need to keep going with that. If you don't have something pressing on something else, you don't achieve motion, nothing moves.
Attracted toward each other. I call it the Preissner gravitational
Attracted, there's another word.
Hypothesis, named after my mother, of course. I hope I haven't set you up for a big disappointment, though. But here's my disclaimer. I am personally over 99% certain that I am right. However, I also recognize that the probability that I am right is less than 1%. So if you add those two numbers together, you get 100% reason to celebrate and make a YouTube video. So here's my pledge to you.
So funny.
When it is shown that the PGH is mostly hot air and has very little substance, I will take full responsibility and make a video explaining what is so. To understand what causes gravity, I need to explain three natural phenomena. The first is the warping of space, and with that, time...
Three natural phenomena. Right, so straight away, the natural phenomena of the warping of space. Where's that natural phenomena happening? I've never experienced that anywhere. Can anybody bring me a measure of this space-time thing? No. So I thought we were going to get the mechanisms here, and straight away we're into cartoon land. Fairy tales. He's already assuming that this concept, this mathematical jargon, is already true, when it's absolutely absurd.
Dilation, which together I simply refer to as space density, which in previous episodes I have talked quite a
So now it's got density to it. Oh, fucking wonderful.
Bit about. In denser space...
So it's always the same. So again, these things, this is where they're having to go with it. So if you're warping something, It has to be some sort of material, some sort of fabric or something that you can account for. And then there would have to be a flow in 360 degrees every which way towards the centre of this cartoon sphere thing. You would have to have something flowing inwards, which would then denote that you've got some sort of mechanism that's bringing stuff towards, like just as I said with the flowing of water going down the drain, right? You can see that as an analogue, but this would have to be 360 degrees every which way round the sphere, all going to a central point. So where's it all flowing to then? Where would it flow to? Nothingness? A black hole that goes to another dimension? I would imagine that's the kind of nonsense these people would come up with.
All processes are slower. The second is the general behavior of quanta
Oh,
as
for
very
fuck's
tiny
sake.
things. Specifically, they act like waves and particles. Quanta can exhibit
fuck's
both
sake.
wave and particle behavior.
Well, even more concepts, piled on top of more concepts, and then we get to something real.
The third one is the properties of refraction. Simply put, it is like waves or particles diving into denser space. You may have experienced this yourself while driving down the road and you drove onto the shoulder. Because the gravel is not as smooth as the road, that side of the car moves more slowly and practically sucks the car off the road.
Sucks.
Taking these ideas,
No, it doesn't suck. There's more resistance. There's more resistance on the tyres. The tyres can't get traction. Right? So as it digs in, there is more resistance, which is causing it not to move so freely. So that's what drags you in. Okay?
let's apply them to a quantum orbit or oscillation. As the particle or wave head
This is just all gobbledygook. This is just all fucking mathematical jargon. Wee circles and fucking nonsense. We're not seeing anything analogue, nothing mechanistic here. Absolutely diddly squat. I'll give him another 30 seconds.
progress through each region of density change, the angle of refraction changes also. Combining the normal orbit with the forces of refraction, we get a new egg-shaped
Refraction of light, I mean, what are we talking about now? I thought we were getting to the roots of this gravity nonsense here.
orbit. This model shows how that in the orbit,
This is a model now. This is a minute where I talked about models, you know, true scale models, true modelling. This looks like computer nonsense to me.
which the forces of refraction are at play, the entire system will shift toward the denser space. The orientation of the orbit in relation to the denser space is actually inconsequential.
Rubbish. Fuck off. Where else have we got? Oh, that's good. How gravity makes things fall. This is what we're looking for.
How does gravity make things fall?
Oh, thank you very much. This is what we're looking for. Yeah, brilliant.
When you let go of an object, why does it immediately start to move toward the ground, accelerating until it hits something? For centuries, gravity was described as a kind of attraction between objects. Then Albert Einstein discovered that gravity is actually a warping of space and time.
Oh, we're back to this now. No thing being warped.
But what does that mean exactly? Maybe you've seen this demonstration, which uses
For
a sheet of
fuck's
stretched
sake.
rubber.
Stop watching fucking idiotic teachers on YouTubes.
Object like the sun warps the space around it, causing the paths of nearby objects like comets to curve, or perhaps even orbit around it.
See, again with the false equivalence, they're talking about things in our reference frame, you know, and how, you know, if you make an impression on there, you get a displacement of the equilibrium. So the weight now shifts, right, and it starts to roll into that place. But that's not what this space is about.
But this is just a handy way to visualize the warping that Einstein described.
No, it's a false equivalence. It's a use of sophistry in order to achieve some biased confirmation of your preconceived religious worldview.
It doesn't actually explain gravity. After all, the ball is only rolling downhill.
Aye.
Why does a ball roll downhill or an apple fall? I wanted to make a demonstration that would explain that. And this is what I came up with. I call it the space-time stretcher. It's basically a graph for charting the up or down motion of an object over time. It's similar to a chart of the stock market.
See, but they'll tell you that space is a vacuum. There's nothing in it. And then they're going to tell you that it's warping and bending and all this rubbish.
Market, or a season of the Chicago Cubs. Now pretend for a minute that there's no gravity.
Pretend.
If we let go of an object, it would just float there. Time would pass, but it wouldn't go up and it wouldn't go down. On our graph, it would follow a flat line along the time axis only. We can represent that line with a strip of colored tape. This is what happens as time passes. The apple stands still. If we tossed an object upward in zero gravity, it would continue going up at the same speed. Without things like air resistance or...
This is what I was talking about before, you know, when I pointed out that it's a more sound claim to postulate that the Earth actually moves towards these things, because just on as he said there, if that starts to move, right, and you've got another one of these above it, right, which is to us static, right, it has mass, but it would have no weight and it would have no direction, then this would come into contact with it, press against it, push it into motion, so now that second object would have a direction of down, and it would also have weight to it because it now has something coming into contact with it to cause resistance.
Ceiling to run into, it would go up forever by its own inertia. On our graph, it would follow a straight line slanting upward. Now let's add some gravity and see what happens. Gravity is like a bending of this graph of space and time.
And we can imagine, pretend, it's like this.
That happened by turning this handle.
You know, grass, you know that stuff. Well, grass is like this imaginary thing from the fifth dimension or something.
The more we turn it, the more our space-time graph gets warped, corresponding to stronger gravity.
Oh, fuck off, man. What a lot of rubbish. This is what I'm saying. You offer up a human being a warped concept, an absurdity, and the human being will adopt it, never ever checking the foundations of it, and they progress into this utter fucking lunacy. How Earth moves, there you go, that's it. This cartoon depicts how Earth moves. So, we've got the Newtonian gravity. That's this saying. Defining gravity. Crash course for kids. Alright, here we go. Since we're all retards, apparently, we should go here at the foundational level so that we can understand what's actually going on. This is it, people. This is how they brainwash their children into believing in absurdities, using cartoons, wee emotive characters to appeal to them, so that they feel attached and no threat to the wee cartoon characters, therefore never suspecting that they're being sold a lot of fucking pish. Right? Because that's how predators operate. That's how they work.
If I told you that you just won the lottery, what would you do? If you're like me, you'd jump up and down and scream. And after you were done freaking out and jumping in the air, you'd land on your feet, right? But why would you land back on the ground instead of just floating off into space? It's because of a little something we call gravity. Gravity is what pulls...
something weak. It's Augusto, they say it with. It's a huge part of the religion.
Everything toward the ground, including you. Without the force of gravity, there would be no life on Earth.
Oh, here we go. Force. A push or pull acting against an object. It can cause an object to move or change direction. But it's pressure variance. Push or pull. Pull is a descriptor of bringing something closer towards yourself, or in the case of maybe you're towing a vehicle. For some people, you think, oh, well, I'm pulling the car. But when you look at the interaction of the materials and where the pressures actually are, what's actually happening is that one thing is pressing on another thing to achieve motion. So it's about pressure. Applying pressure or relieving pressure will create what we call motion. So you always get this. This is where the confusion starts to happen. Push or pull, push or pull. No. laws of motion, factually, real world, demonstrable, you need some sort of pressure variance. One thing pressing on another thing.
Air, water, animals, everything would fly off into space. There'd be no you.
Everything would fly off into an imaginary reference frame that nobody has ever checked and is an absolute absurdity when you apply deduction from physical interaction with your actual reality.
No me, no French fries, nada.
Oh, but look, we've got wee characters and French fries and wee colours and stuff that appeals to the children's. So they're already emotionally attached and unsuspecting of the sheer bullshit that's about to be put on them.
Think of gravity like the invisible superglue that holds our massive world together.
Here we go. Oh, fuck off. Gravity is the invisible superglue that holds the world together. You have to imagine it all. Right? Like, we've got super glue and then you stick stuff onto it.
You can't see it, but it's always there. An English scientist named Isaac Newton was the first person to seriously study gravity over 300 years ago. There's a famous story about him that you might have heard.
Seriously studied it. Oh, famous story. Cartoon, an apple fell and all of a sudden forces pulling stuff towards the earth.
Supposedly, Sir Isaac was hanging out underneath an apple tree thinking, probably partly napping,
Notice the use of words, supposedly.
when an apple fell from the tree and conked him on the
I
head.
think they just made all this rubbish up. Right? To push their conceptual rubbish. They've just made it up.
That's when Sir Isaac...
Because any clever, intelligent mind would never postulate a pulling force. There's no mechanisms to it. Mass attracts mass. The more mass there is, the more gravity there is. We've got water running off of mountains to an area where there's less mass. And then pulling up, creating a level surface. What's happening there? Why is the water no sticking to the fucking mountains?
had an aha moment. Why did the apple fall down to the ground and not up or sideways? He realized that a special kind of force, which we now know as gravity, was acting on all of the objects on
See,
Earth.
special kind of force again to children. It's special. Special. They have relationships to these words. Right? And this is affecting them. These cartoons and this use of language.
Pulling them toward it. Once the apple
You
became
don't pull anything. I'm sick of it. I'm just going to keep saying it over and over and over again. You don't pull. There's no such thing as pull. You have to have a direct connection between two objects. There has to be some sort of mechanism applying a pressure from one to the other. So as I've said before, are they talking about gravity as a flow from the top down? Something flowing towards the earth? Or is this gravity that's at the centre of the Earth globe concept, is it throwing out some sort of invisible rods or something that's attaching onto other objects and then winding them in? Because that's what reality shows us. That's how we achieve motion.
too heavy for its stem to hold it anymore. The gravitational pull of Earth brought the apple down onto Newton's noggin. Newton also realized it doesn't matter how heavy an object is either, whether you're holding an apple or a bowling ball or a feather. If you let go of it, that sucker's going down. We're gonna make a whole video about this later. Basically, he determined that what goes up must come down. Sir Isaac was a pretty smart dude. Okay, so you know that if you jump up, you'll eventually land back on the ground. And you know that an apple dropped down will land on the ground too. But what if you throw something in front of you, or to the left, or the right? To see how gravity will act, pick up the tennis ball or any small round object and hold it in your hand. Let's toss it in the air and watch it fall to the ground. No surprise here. Okay, now pick it up and hold it over your head. Let go, and watch it fall once more. Again, not a shocker. Now throw it to your left. Ball down. Pitch it to the right, and watch it go down again.
Amazing. Conclusion. Brilliant.
No matter where you throw the ball, it's going down. So we've determined that near the surface of the Earth, where we all are, gravity is the cause that produces the effect.
Gravity is the cause. They've established a cause and effect relationship by using mathematical conceptual rubbish. Right, that's not establishing cause and effect. Because as I've pointed out, you need to have some sort of mechanism. How does this non-entity attach to this entity up here and bring it towards it? There has to be something between them. There either has to be something on this side of this object pressing on it to bring it towards this one, or this one somehow sends out something that latches onto this one, applies a pressure to it and brings it towards it. We're still not getting anywhere here with this gravity rubbish. I want to understand as well how this gravity somehow, changes the structure of what we know as water, that can now allow it to behave in an absurd, non-demonstrable way.
Of all unsupported objects falling down. The ball will go up, or to the left, or to the right for a little bit.
Shut up, silly. No got a clue what you're talking about. But here we are, that's the types of people. This is what I'm saying, people don't have to be in on a lie. You've got people like that just believe any old horse shite. Right? Because they're made to feel relevant and important. I'm a school teacher, I'm an authority on such matters. They say it with gusto and confidence. Right? But they're just lunatics. That's another one. That's the same one.
It's a force exerted by the earth to pull objects to something that pulls up. What is gravity? And what you'd probably hear is, it's something that pulls objects towards the earth, or it's a force exerted by the earth to pull objects towards it.
Right, that's exactly how I've heard it, and this is what they always state, and then they try and shift the goalposts. They'll say, we don't know what it is, or how it functions, Right, well, she's just clearly stated, the earth somehow exerts something on other objects to bring them towards him. Now again, we understand there has to be some sort of mechanism. There has to be an attachment between two objects, a flow of some kind going in a particular direction, or they are attached physically by some mechanism.
Now, before we get to the basics of gravitation, there is one thing I want you to understand well. Rather, there's one thing I want you to forget. Forget the fact that gravity has got to do only with the earth and the objects close to it. That's not gravity. We'd see examples where objects are falling to the ground, and we assume that it's the only concept we need to know about gravity. Yes, of course,
At least she used an honest word, concept.
It's gravity that pulls the objects towards the earth, but that's not the only thing you need to understand about gravity.
Pulling would denote that there's something in the earth that it's casting out to attach to other objects and then bringing the objects towards its centre. So that takes away the possibility of a top-down flow of some kind, which right away totally deflates their whole notion. Because it's absurd rubbish. You stand in front of any object and try and get it to come towards you without attaching something to it. Go for it. Or having some sort of flow, like a wind or something coming towards you, which would bring an object closer to you. Again, applying a pressure to it. So, when they make the statement that it's the gravity within Earth somehow affecting objects above Earth, that's absolutely bonkers.
So what is gravity? Consider your screen to be the universe. And these are any two objects in the universe. They could be planets, or humans, or animals, or whatever. Just that they both have non-zero mass.
Non-zero mass, which means they've got mass. So there's something rather than nothing. Non-zero mass, there's two objects of mass. Just stick to that.
In this case, both objects are pulling the other object towards each other.
Right, so here we go. Both objects are pulling the other object towards each other. Now we've got one object here and another object. Now in actual reality, the only way for him to get that towards himself is to have a pal here on the other side, or a strong enough wind that would apply a pressure here at this side and push it towards him. Or he can reach his hand over to the other side of it and apply a pressure here and push it towards himself, or he could put some super glue on his fingers and attach his fingers to this side of it and then retract it towards him. Or he could have a wee fishing rod with some hooks in it and they could cast it out and they would sink in here and then they would apply a pressure on the inside going in that direction and he could bring it towards himself. That's reality. That's how reality functions. So when they continually use this nonsense of pulling and attracting rubbish, that's exactly what it is. Total and utter bollocks. Pure garbage.
This object is pulling this one towards itself, and the other object is pulling this one towards itself.
Amazing.
This attractive force between any two masses in the universe is called the gravitational force.
The gravitational force, aye.
So the gravitational
Utter
force
pish.
is the attractive...
See, this is what I'm saying, how they've extrapolated on an object falling within the reference frame that we call Earth, the world. Right? And they've come up with all this ad hoc, utter rubbish to hold together a conceptual notion of what you call the globe Earth, or your home.
force between any two objects with non-zero mass separated by a distance. It's not only the force that Earth uses to pull objects towards it.
Yes, you're saying it again. How did Earth make them go towards it?
But yes, as all of us have Earth as our habitat, most examples we see for gravitation will relate to the Earth pulling objects towards it. But you should know that it's not the only force that explains gravitation. In the case of Earth and a human being, the Earth is one object and the human being is another.
Oh, well done.
Both are pulling the other towards themselves.
Brilliant.
But why does this happen? If you do a lot of research onto what gravity really means, you may find
Do a lot
out
of research means listen to fucking long-winded jargon that doesn't make any fucking sense, that has no demonstrable practical references to support it in any way, shape or fucking form. The only thing they have is, oh, something falls and then they extrapolate on it to all this cartoon rubbish, attractive and pulling forces and warping and bending of non-entities, non-objects.
that gravity is not actually a force and it's just an illusion. So for now, it's enough to know that gravitational force is just the...
That's them getting out of it. No, what they're doing out there is telling you, look, there's just this effect of things falling. And we've made all this rubbish up to explain that and to explain why, antipode to him, there's another wee astronaut dude standing upside down to him. Because again, in real world, everyday lived life, that's just total bonkers. Because you know, if you were standing at the top of a hill and your pal went to try and stand on the underside of the cliff adjacent to you, he would fall off and die.
attractive force between any two objects with non-zero mass separated by a distance.
Why does she keep saying non-zero mass? Why does she not just say attractive force between any two objects with mass? Because an object would have to have mass, or it's not an object, it's a no thing. Just like space-time is a no thing, a non-entity. Rubbish.
After knowing the basics, you'd probably have many questions in mind.
She's learning the basics of fucking gobbledygook. Nonsensical jargon. Again, probably aimed at gullible, vulnerable children.
Does the apple fall towards the earth, or does the earth move towards the apple?
Oh, there we're getting into it. Oh, you're not allowed to say that. Ooh, that flat earth society stuff, you know that. But the earth moving towards it makes much more fucking sense than the jargon and rubbish that they come out with. Because, as I've showed, again, demonstrably, that actually works. That would give direction. It would give resistance, which would give weight.
If two objects always attract each other, why don't two humans get pulled towards each other? Why don't two stars collide with each other? After watching our videos based on gravitation, you will be able to answer all these questions.
Well, Willa, I'm none the wiser hen. You're talking utter crap. Now stop trying to pass that off as something real to fucking children. There's Ken Wheeler. This guy, you know, he does talk some sense. This Ken Wheeler guy talks about Euclidean geometry. If it doesn't conform to Euclidean geometry, it's not real, and then wants to waffle on about fucking space testicles. You know, this rubbish. So I've got my suspicions about guys like him. Why are they so intellectually dishonest? We're just getting more cartoons. How long's that? 9 minutes? Can't be bored with that. Our ignorance about gravity. Get some cartoon drawings. Brilliant. What's gravity made of? That'll be interesting. What's gravity made of? What is my concept made of? Nothing.
Incredible and surprising physics discoveries of the century was just made by a team of scientists based at the South Pole operating a telescope called BICEP 2. They found a celestial fingerprint that not only explains the explosive beginning of time...
Oh, there you go, Domers. It's a fingerprint. That's a big giant god guy that's up there planting big massive trees. He was cleaning it one day and never polished it right and left a fingerprint on it. There you go, proofsies right there and then. It's proof of the dome. Proof of the dome, everybody. Rejoice. God's up there polishing the fucking dome, left a dirty fingerprint. NASA dudes have found it. Good on them.
Time, but also reveals gravity's microscopic secrets. To understand what this fingerprint is, imagine turning back the...
There we go again. They've always got this word imagine. Imagine.
Cosmic clock to just after the Big Bang.
Oh fuck, we have to assume the Big Bang's correct as well. That's just a given. Nothing expanded into everything. And that's how the story goes. So let's get back to just before that happened, shall we? Because we've all got time machines now. Aye. We're all jumping about in time machines. I need to catch up. I'm missing out here. Where do I get myself one of these fucking time machines? So that I can remove myself from the reference frame of existence and get outside it to watch its inception. That's fucking wonderful stuff.
When the universe was crowded into a hot, dense ball over...
Oh, it was a ball. No, singularity was a hot, dense ball. Existing nowhere, apparently. This black stuff running about you here. That's no space event. That's no thing. Nothing. It's no surrounded by anything. And then it's going to expand into that. So this black emptiness, where does it go? What's it confined by? Is it infinite? And it has no properties. So what is it then? And how did that expand into it? I don't think we'll get any answers here.
Billion times smaller than an atom's nucleus.
Oh, fuck.
For decades, physicists have wondered what laws of nature would dominate here. The tiny size of the universe...
So if you look at the laws of nature, the reference frame that we exist in, and then we have to take that out of the reference frame and somehow apply it to a non-reference frame that doesn't exist. And we'll call that scientifical.
Meant the seething, ethereal world of quantum particles should be at play. But the immense mass meant the space...
Is it just me, or is anybody noticing that this is just cartoons?
Bending world of gravity should also be at work. So physicists merged these worlds and came up with a strange idea. They proposed that gravity is actually made of quantum particles, which they called gravitons.
Oh,
Anywhere there's gravity, there would be gravitons. On Earth...
Tiny wee space balls. Fuck off. Can't be bothered with this rubbish.
Gravitational waves are considered ripples in space-time.
I'm not getting any answers here. I don't know about anybody else. I'm just getting mathematical fucking jargon about fucking non-entities. Imagination land.
What is space-time? Let's try to visualize it by imagining it as this...
Notice how many times, let's try and visualise it by imagining it. Let's use a false equivalence, image-based nonsense to pass it off so that you adopt it. Thank you very much. Thanks. Right. What's she saying? Hold on.
Blanket. Yes, we're compressing 4 dimensions into 3. A smaller object on the blanket's surface doesn't change the shape all that much. It will just roll straight across.
Right, fuck off. I mean, we've already seen this lycra spandex nonsense. This is another one.
You know, another thing that Einstein...
Check it out. Gravity Demo Part 4, Black Holes.
Einstein's theory of relativity predicted was black holes. And let me show you how you can explain what black holes are all about using this equipment over here. This is a 4-pound ball, which I will put in my fabric of space-time. And you can see that it curves it a certain amount over there. A heavier ball would curve it more, a ball that's not so much would curve it less. But the point...
What, so the weight of it would make a difference? But you're utilising physics of this reference frame and on-world, stuff. He's now, try to pass it off as out with the reference frame. And now, this is fucking ridiculous.
The point is that 4 pounds of ball curves the space like that. It doesn't matter how I get 4 pounds over there. Out here, it will still curve it the same.
And then is that space now flowing into it in any given direction towards its non-entity centre?
Amount. So if I were to take a different ball and crush it down, let's say make it out of lead, it still was 4 pounds. It would be a lot smaller over here, but out
Wow, what a fucking intellect.
here, it would be exactly the same. Or if I took that other ball, ball and like really squeezed it down so it was really dense, like plutonium or something like that, it might only be this big and 4 pounds. It would pull down that cloth different.
Pulled in the cloth, no, it would press on it. It would apply a pressure to it, pushing on it.
Way down over there. But out here, 4 pounds of pull is 4 pounds of pull.
No, pressure. 4 pounds of pressure. Pull is not a mechanism of anything. It's a descriptor of direction. Okay, son?
Supposing that I were to keep on compressing that 4 pounds, smaller and smaller and smaller, it's like a BB. Now it's like a pinpoint. Eventually, I would get a situation where you still have that curvature, but the ball is so small that you can't even see it anymore. And that's really what the idea of a black hole is that this.
You have to get a ball and compress it, right? Put it on some lycra until you can't see it anymore, and that's the idea of what a black hole is. Or for fuck's sake. I mean, look at the fucking state of this. This is incredible. Honestly. Wow, man. Right, I forget where I was even going now. I need to take a break for that fucking crap, because... Is it just me? Is it just I? Is there anybody out there that believes gravity, the concept, either Newtonian or Einsteinian, that can come in and demonstrate the mechanisms of this rubbish? No, you can't. I'm just saying that, and I know that you can't. And I know that it's absolute rubbish. But people really need to grasp this stuff, because it's massively important. How does reality function? How does motion happen? Understand that, and then apply it to the claims that these people are making. You see how utterly ridiculous it actually is. So you ask them, because I'll bring up water, and then they'll say gravity, and then they'll use other false equivalencies, like you've probably seen this. Look how water behaves on the ISS. Look on my TV screen. Look at this blob of water and how it behaves. More false equivalencies, more rubbish, no scientific. That's not our reality. That's not how things operate here in actual three-dimensional, tangible reality. Then they'll say stuff like, if you take water and it will conform to the forces acting upon it. They just use word salad. They'll say this stuff. Water will conform to forces acting upon it. If I remove water and I take it to a place where no forces are acting upon it, so you can get a reference frame where no thing exists. So we've got a reference frame of no thing somewhere, wherever that may be, and you can somehow transport water, which is something, to this place of no thing, and demonstrate to me what happens to water when no forces at all are acting upon it. Because that's what you would need. You would need a reference frame where no thing exists. There is no such a place as no thing. More absurd rubbish. Where was it going? can't remember. So hold on a now. I've got a couple of wee videos here. I'll put in the link in the description. This was FPV Angel, sorry, and a few other people who are working to try and understand, you know, some of these things. There's another one somewhere. Wait a minute. So in these they're talking about capacitance, you know, some flow of electricity or whatever it may be, which again for me I can work with, I can, you know, formulate an understanding of that or the possibilities of it, because these things are demonstrable. You know, but when we start talking about pulling things coming towards each other with no mechanism between them, yeah, you've lost me, because that's just total lunacy. Where else was I going? Right, I can get rid of that now. Right, hold on. Gravity. We'll go to Wikipedia, right? Let's see if we can get an understanding here. Gravity, from Latin gravitas, meaning weight. So when something's got weight, they're talking about gravity, that's what it is. But in order for something to have weight, it needs something to resist it. Or gravitation is a natural phenomenon. So when they're saying natural phenomenon, what they're actually talking about is when you pick something up and drop it, it falls. So there's your natural phenomenon. Which all things with mass or energy, including planets, stars and galaxies, and even light, are brought toward or gravitate toward one another. Again, we're back to this again. How's that happening? It's got to be a flow. Something flowing towards something else to carry something else towards it, or there has to be some sort of direct connection between one object and another object in order to bring the two of them together. On Earth, gravity gives weight, doesn't it? So gravity now creates the resistance of another object in order to give it weight. It's only got weight when it comes into contact with the Earth or something else. So again, you're just using words, gravity, and all this magical stuff that it can achieve and what it does. And the moon's gravity causes the ocean tides. We're back to this again. There's the moon. There's the concept moon, the concept Earth, right? Nothing in between them. But this one somehow brings oceans, so that there's a bigger rotundity now on the oceans towards this one. What's happening between them? How's that happening? There must be an infinite amount of wee rods all connected to the molecules of the water, attaching onto them and then winding them in towards the moon. It's sickening. It really is, does it? It makes me feel physically sick that people buy this fucking crap. I can't wait to get back to this quackademia. I am going to seriously rip the pish right out of them. Because as I said at the beginning of this, that's what it deserves. Absurdities, nonsense deserves ridicule. The gravitational attraction of the original gaseous matter present in the universe caused it to begin coalescing. So now we're back to this again. Let's go to physics. Let's create a vacuum. Let's throw in some gas. How long do we need to wait before the gas comes together, compresses and forms planetoids? Huh? Forming stars, and for the stars to group together into galaxies. Random gas, it's just getting itself together. Maybe the wee minute particles, tiny space bars are having a chat. Oh, let's get together and we'll go and we'll form galaxies and that. So gravity is responsible for many of the large-scale structures in the universe. I mean, they'd be as well just saying God. They would be as well just saying God. There's an invisible fucking giant out there somewhere. It's invisible. And what he's doing is he's compressing stuff and rolling it into wee balls, pinging them into orbits or something. Maybe it's like an invisible Skeletrix track or something. And the wee balls are hovering above the Skeletrix track. I mean, we'll get anywhere there. What causes gravity? What's this one? This is some paper by Martin Hogbin. One of Einstein's old tutors, a man by the name of whatever, showed that a special theory of relativity could be expressed in an interesting way. Could be expressed, telling you that it's just nonsense. The world we live in consists of 4 dimensions. That's what it ends by. How does gravity affect water? That's what I put in. Gravity is the force of attraction. Back to this again. Attraction's not a thing, it's bollocks. Between 2 objects. And Earth's gravity pulls matter downwards. See, we're getting the statements again. Earth's gravity, so Earth, pulls stuff towards it. So how is it achieving that? Towards its centre. It pulls precipitation down from clouds and pulls water downhill. Hang on a minute, that's conflicting. Newtonian. Total confliction. Because there's more mass on mountain ranges than there is in the gullies and valleys beneath them. So there's less to warp and bend. You can use either one. There's less mass, so therefore less mass means less warping and bending of non-entities. So why is the water no style in the mountains there? I predict we will get no fucking answers because it's utter lunacy. And that's about all there is to say about it. So I'm done with all that crap. I just wanted to rip the pish out of their idiocy. So we should understand by now, in order for 2 objects to have an effect on the other object, we either need some flow of some kind pressing on one object to press it towards the other object, which then presses on that object and makes it move. Or we need this object or this object to somehow have an effect by something coming out of that one and pressing on the back of this one to press it and towards it. Or this one somehow attaches onto this one here at the front by hooks or something. And then it winds it in by pulleys, levers, pressing to achieve the motion towards the other one. That's reality. That's just real world, factual reality that you can't break. But the globe concept thinks it can. That can just ignore reality. That tells you that it's not about exploring science. It's fucking rubbish. Is what it is. I really hope people get this, because it's fucking hugely important and hugely relevant to obliterating this nonsensical conceptual rubbish that these creepy cult lunatics keep coming out with. Massively important. I get sense for some tartan paint as well. and a tin of sparks for the grinder. That's the type of crap that gullible globe proponents would believe in. Go and get me a tin of sparks from my grinder. My sparks are running out. Hold on, I'll enter the fourth dimension through my wormhole black hole thing, and I'll go to Neptune, Pluto. There's loads of sparks there, I'll capture some. They'll have a university meet-up sometime, maybe even a tour of the unis, make a video series on what the students all say. That's what I've been doing, Mr. Cheswick. I encourage everybody else to go and interact with the universities as well. As I said, I'm very cautious about organising bands of peoples, to go and, descend on places. I say people can operate themselves. If people want to join me at any time, that's fine. I'm not going to go organising bands of fucking groups. I'm no cult leader. I'm not going to be labelled and painted with any of that crap either. But I get what you mean, I say, if more individuals start partaking in what I've shown you can partake in, then we would get somewhere. But people keep hovering to these things thinking it's going to achieve something. Hit the universities, hit the colleges, hit the institutions of education and ask the questions. So I get it, Mr. Cheswick, people thinking, how can we get somewhere, how can we... But for me, you've just got to be very cautious of these things, that's all, Skyhooks, aye. Harry Growler, how you doing, mate? I can theorise that the larger mass of Brian Cox's head would attract that lesser masses of our fists. I can predict that as well. And I could predict that he would just cry and grass on us. Because that's the type of sneaky wee snake that he is. I Dale the Mason, aye, that's right. I've been practising my trouser leg roll. Anybody want to join me? If there's anybody here that has an issue or would like to correct me on the mechanisms of motion, and you want to defend attractive nonsense and pulling forcey nonsense, by all means. As I said before, there's too much of this rubbish that you're just going to be shouted at and abused. That's only if you come in here displaying your dishonesty and your antagonistic behaviour, then you'll get that. But if you can come in here and speak to me with decency, you'll get the very same in return. So there's absolutely no excuse. If you deny anything that's been stated here and you think you've got something to offer, send me an email right now and I will send you a link to join me. Right. Let me just check. Bully mates. Maybe they're just getting it. Maybe they're actually listening now and they realise that we can't keep defending this nonsense. No worries, Brian. Actually, what was the date on that again? I can't remember. That's fine anyway. Just whenever, mate. There you go. You are told that with Newtonian gravity, mass attracts mass, which means the Earth actually moves upwards towards the apple that is falling. Absolutely ridiculous. So, Jacob, this is exactly it. Yeah, but then they want to jump on a bandwagon and say that you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to pause it or even suggest that the possibility that the Earth is moving. You're not allowed because propaganda reasons and whatever. We got Gav in the house. How's it going, mate? Exactly, shows we shows. That's exactly what it is. No answers when pressed to demonstrate the claims made. That's it, Dave Finkel. This is why I continually keep doing this. Because if there's new people, maybe people that don't fully understand what's going on, I'm just going to keep pointing at this stuff until the penny drops. Penny dropped because gravity did it. It's the same stuff, you know, again, people that know this channel, and what you will see is that they will not partake in an actual discussion, displaying their integrity and their honesty. They will wait until this is over, and then from fucking nowhere, from another dimension, they'll appear in the comment section spouting rubbish. Probably rubbish that I've just obliterated right here. They'll come out with stuff and say, magnets. You can look at representations. Eric Laithwaite shows demonstrations of a rack and pinion type scenario where what I'm saying to you is that you have to have a flow of some kind. Something has to press on something else to create motion. It'll display that for you. But what you need to remember is that they're not saying any of that stuff. They're saying you've got Earth, object, and Earth somehow is making the object come towards it. As I keep saying, you either need a flow coming past, through, and moving the object towards it, or this somehow attaches on and brings it towards itself. This is their god, exactly, Magumba. This is their god, gravity. This is the linchpin, the thing that holds their whole silly, idiotic concept together. And who am I? I can walk through it in my own mind, just me, and absolutely shite on it. You've got morons paying thousands to go and be educated, to regurgitate this rubbish, this babble. Gav's got a degree. Can you verify what I've said based on your bit of paper, Gav? Thanks. That seems to be what everybody requires. God and these snotters. Maybe that's what it is. As I says, dome's been proven right here and now. God's fingerprints on the dome. Never polished it right. Maybe it was his wife. Maybe she couldn't be bothered that day. She's too busy buying makeup or something. She forgot to wipe her finger marks off the dome. Aye, Vortex Puppy and Harry Growler, come on in and join me. Because I'm not got very much else to say. He's wanting to join me. Pulley spells, indeed, Keith Anthony. Aye, Pico, I kind of lean towards that as well. That's something that I can get on board with. It's demonstrable. We can use that as an analogue reference. We can suggest it as a possibility. Know that I'm saying it is what's actually going on. There's much more questions to be asked. Exactly, plausible. I think the ether is real. It depends what you mean by ether. My own thoughts on it is that what the prime mover, I will call it, the prime mover, people call it God, ether, whatever it may be, gives rise to everything. There has to be a base level to this. It gives rise to everything. It moves through everything. It is everything. Whether we can work that out or no, I highly doubt. Because as I've said before, we are part of the effect. We are within it. We will never be removed from the reference frame to know it as a whole, unless you can do that when you die. But Andrew Melvin, when was it you started to question everything you question? Was it a gradual or one specific moment, new to your channel? Sorry if you said before. My whole life, Andrew. From the things that disturbed me as a child, from that very moment of being disturbed for whatever it was, you know, I've been asking the questions of what is my existence, what's going on with people, what's going on with the world, what is the world, what is reality. As I say, I went through that moment in my life where I was succumbed to the delusional concepts and ideas that were offered up through my culture, and I tried to pursue them. For a very short period of time, I became disillusioned by it all very, very quickly, and then descended into heavy depression for about 10 years, where I figured things out. Alright, Gav, you're going to join. Good stuffs. Let's have a wee chat. Let's rip the pish out of nonsense. That'll be good. Right, let me see here. I need... Harry Growler, where are you? I don't know. Alright, I'll just send you this anyway. You don't, obviously there's no obligation, you don't need to join. I'm just sending you in case you did fancy it. Where are you? Here's a wee second. Why am I not finding you here? You still on Hangouts? There you're there. Feel free to join if you want, mate. GeoShifter, how you doing? Not seen you about for a while either. Brother Patrick, that's what we're having. What I'm pointing out is the absurdity of the claims postulated by the globular earth concept and how it's absolutely ludicrous. But the questions should still be asked. Of course, that's what we're all involved in this for, asking the questions. But predominantly I'm just asking questions of claims, as I always have done. Because by asking questions of claims or postulations, whatever anybody's offering you, I can break them. If I continually ask the questions, I can find the weak points, I can break stuff, and then I can move on. If I can't break it, it's true. Fat pants, we're not interested in you, son. Bye-bye. Quite possibly. Forest chops. A bad trip. It's too deliberate. It's too thought out though. Sneaky bastards. Indeed, just like a fart gone with the wind. His wee smelliness drifting away to somewhere else. Maybe it's gone up towards the dome. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe Fat Pants farted. He had a curry the night before and it fucking rose up. And while God's wife was polishing the dome, she got a fucking whiff of it and went, oh fuck! Put her fingers on it and left a fucking finger mark. Went away to be sick. In the fifth dimension, through a black hole. Some wee entity in the fucking sixth dimension has just received a bucket load of fucking God's wife's spew because of Fat Pants. I hope you're proud of yourself, Fat Pants.
Alright, my man.
How's it going, mate?
Nice sound.
Hold on.
Yourself.
Good. I can share the now because, hold on now. Are you there?
You finished with the house?
There you are. Am I what?
Are you finished with your house?
No, I've still got another week yet, I think.
It's not level yet, is it? No, I'm just kinking out these curves.
Aye. That was a problem I was having. I was going by the globe version of level and I fucked everything up.
So you and Marty, you were in looking at the fucking light bulbs, weren't you?
Right.
Couldn't get that carpet laid.
I don't know what's happening. My shower tray's bent and all the water's just sticking to it. I can't get it to go to the fucking drain point. I don't know what's going on.
You try pushing it.
Aye.
No. The nonsense that gets talked to.
Aye.
I mean, I remember well, and I just have to tell the wee story of getting your degree, you know, and being able to stand at hear the Harry Potter, you know, the castle.
Yeah.
And you know, you're young and fairly naive in life generally, Dale, right? You know, you're 20, 21, right? You think you know it all, right? You've had your head stuffed full of mathematical physics for 4 years. They give you the wee bit of paper, right? And you come out of there thinking you're fucking, you know, you're smart as hell, you know, you're one of the fucking clever wee bastards, you know?
Yeah.
And then when you get there, it happens to be 55 now, Dale, you look back at that time, you say, how fucking stupid could you possibly have been just to believe all that on faith, right? Yeah. You know, just because some guy up there was repeating something that somebody said, right? And it all starts off with some metaphysical concept and an assumption of a space, right? As you quite right about, of balls, right? I mean, it needs that story to all work, right? All this gravity, you know, the whole thing is postulating this space outside, which we have no proof for, no evidence whatsoever, right? In fact, everything points against it.
Yeah.
You know, you need containment and, you know, water stays level. Everything, you know, all of the natural things that we experience are all contradicting that overall narrative, right?
Yeah.
But the whole sophistry and the words and everything that gets wrapped around it is so enthralling sometimes and so hammered with the science fiction and the Star Trek, you know, and all the bullshit stuff that we grew up with. That's the only way they can make it work, you know. It's the only way they can make it believable.
It's a dangling the carrot of stature and achievement that drives you to want it, to achieve it, to attain it, which again...
Yeah, you want a pat in the back. Yeah,
Aye.
you want to get the wee gold stars in the books
Yeah.
because that's what you've been trained to do. You know,
Aye.
go to the potty. You know, well done. You know.
Yeah, again, that example just negates the whole nonsense of everybody has to be in on the line. I know we've spoken about this so many times, but as I said at the beginning, we have to keep bringing these things up and keep repeating them and making it obvious. You don't have to be lying about it. You've got a carrot of stature and achievement and reward, and that's it. Just like a wee dog, you know. Fetch the ball, bring it back to me, there's your treat. You know?
That's right. That's right. It's like, it really is Pavlovian and fucking instincts that get drilled into you. You know?
Exactly.
Just to do all these things
Yeah.
for I don't know, to make yourself feel good, but that's bullshit because that's just something that's been trained into you. It's not really about feeling good. Feeling good's lots of other great stuff, you know.
Yeah. But
You
when
know,
you're
you can feel
younger,
good about a lot of lovely things, but getting wee stars in your jotters is just such a ridiculous thing to believe in.
aye, but when you're younger, that's it, because you're being elevated in stature above the others, you know, and your ego starts to be inflated. You start to think you've got more self-importance than anybody else, and that's, as I said, I showed there a minute ago, the women, all giddy about their gobbledygook. It's just because they've been patted on the back, they've had an achievement, and they think that it's all good. They're no lying.
Yep.
They just don't understand the bullshit that they're spewing. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why it's so worth repeating, Dale. The fact that it can happen to anybody. In fact, it has happened to all of us. I don't think there's anybody that has been immune to it.
No.
Show me one person that hasn't, had that feeling maybe as a kid or, later in life. Or,
Aye.
So it's not as if we can't just, accept and recognise that these things are part of us and understand how it works and undermine how they then manipulate it.
It's so
what I mean? We
simple.
need to stop it.
Right, it's something that happened at a very early age. Fucking 4-year-old, where'd you get your bike? Oh, Santa Claus brought it down the chimney for me. I'm not telling any lies, that's what I believed.
Yeah. Yeah, no, not everybody's in there. In fact, there's very few I would think that actually know the full story.
Alright. So what was point?
Or maybe, as I say, maybe they don't even know the full story. They're taking advantage of the fact that nobody else does either. Do you know what I mean?
So what I was just pointing out, obviously I don't know if you've seen it, you've heard it before, but as I say, I just like to keep reiterating this. They're talking about gravity, and you hear the statements, Earth, it's gravity, pulls, and these things, and again getting into the laws of motion, demonstrating in reality what's required to move stuff and how these things are achieved. As you said, even if you grant them there's a space outside, that still doesn't lend any credence to their notion of pulling forces.
No. No, I mean, even the guy who, Newton, who came up with the basic concept, right? And I mean, he said himself it's a concept. He says himself it's metaphysics. Yeah, even if it's real or not.
Aye.
I think all the embellishments with apples is just to make it stick, I mean, liars tend to embellish their stories, right?
Of course.
Because it makes it seem more authentic, right?
Of course.
So, but, let's assume the guy did exist, and probably did, right? And he probably was a mathematical physicist, and maybe he was the first guy that tried to combine those two subjects into a kind of explanation of the visible lights moving in the sky, right? Because, if his theory could prove, that these are space balls and that they're actually moving around and that it's mechanical according to this magical action at a distance, But even he said in his paper is absolutely preposterous, If you actually read how he defines the things, and he's basically saying it's a definition, right? I'm using it to convey ideas and concepts, but don't think this is real.
Yeah.
I mean, he said it himself,
That's
it. But all that's just been spun and used, right, to deceive since then, if you ask me.
Of course. That's the power of an idea, a concept, if you can get them to adopt it. And people will just run with it, they'll pass it on to the next generations, and it becomes a fact in their minds.
Well, they'll just change the story for the next generation, right? You introduce the equivalence principle, and then you're off to Granny's lycra knickers, right?
Really?
And the bending of space-time, with a couple of changes in geometric axioms. Hey, we mathematicians have figured it out.
Huh?
No, you didn't, All you did was try and define the terms to suit your own fucking narrative. That's all you did. Because that's everybody's choice at the beginning to, state the principles from which they're going to start. And if they've got a preconceived result of, how they want the visible stars to work, right? Hey, bingo, you just define it that way.
Yep.
Nobody should think that maths is a science, right? It's looking at the physics and it's getting behind it, formally defining it, and then generalizing into things that are, not provable, no evidence whatsoever, nothing demonstrable, just fantasies, just mental objects of thought from, people who think they know it all.
Exactly.
Yeah, to get back to the original start, Also, what was it? He was supposed to have been 14, 16, 18. You can just imagine this great, you know how young people are like, right? I mean, they've got an inquisitive, inquiring mind. I'd say, there's a different growth and acceleration in mental capacity when you're young than when you're older.
Yeah.
When you're older, it seems that you're better at sifting through it and comparing and relating it and ratiocinating it, right?
Yeah.
Putting it in some kind of relation to each other. But when you're young, you can get easily manipulated. You're like a sponge, right? Taking it all in and then, you go.
Exactly.
You get into wild fantasies. So I'm sure, he's some great fantasies, Newton. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, look what it's achieved, fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Okay. The amount of people that believe in this absurd crap. So, as I say, I can't wait now. That's my next port of call with the unis and stuff. I want to open up the discussions on gravity, what their interpretation of it is, what they think about it, how they define in it, so that I can point out the obvious to them and see where it goes from there, Because as you say, for me, it's a linchpin. It's the central point of their whole concept. They need it,
Yeah.
So.
Well, they do. I mean, they need to keep the education and the brainwashing going, because without that, common sense would just switch on, right? But they've got to keep us all distracted so that we don't understand, how the natural world around us works, including ourselves, right?
Just ignoring it.
Exactly. just look outside at that shiny object on the wall,
Exactly.
The moving pictures.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a firework. Therefore, my beliefs is true. Brilliant. Brilliant. Aye.
So is Harry going to join us?
I don't know. It's just it was suggested in the
for
chat.
a long time.
I don't. As I say, there was no pressure or expectation on. I've just sent a link anyway, so I don't think anybody else.
Tell me, get his arse in here, Harry. Come on, my man. Stop sleeping.
Aye. Let's see. We got a couple here. Nether Wormington, Heidi, I wanted to ring in for a while. Would like to discuss my journey to FE and how, if possible, brains can't reach certain concepts, they're beyond help. Anyway, it'd be nice to speak to you. I am a time-served engineer of Rolls-Royce and try to mention many others think I can put some interesting crack. Do I use Google Plus? No, you need Google Hangouts, Nether Wormington. You need to download Google Hangouts, install it onto your device, and then I can send you a link. Pete Shee, there's a name I've not had here for a while. I have an answer to what gravity is. What is gravity? Not saying it is correct, but I have an answer. What is the opposite of pull? Any link going? I'll be on camera speaking honestly and openly. What do we think? Are we going to give Pete Shee a chance? Huh?
Sorry, say again. You speaking to me?
Pete Shee, I've got Pete Shee asking for a link. I have an answer to what gravity is. Not saying it's correct, but I have an answer. What is the opposite of pull? There's no such thing as pull. Pull's a descriptor of direction. I mean, you're not paying attention. Let's see here. I need to just shut that off a new gaff so you can't be seen, because I don't know who this is, right?
Right.
Aye, I mean, just we'll continue what we're talking about just now anyway.
No pressure. No pushing allowed.
It bothers me that people are here but they don't pay attention. So what I'm saying isn't, an idea or it's a fact. Motion requires pressure,
Yep. Carries an impulse, an impression on, something physical, right? That gets pushed. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's
you can't deny the substance.
No.
Because otherwise all we've got is, either visible objects, right? Or we put mental objects. That's the only other two things available to you.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, let's just go off and down a rabbit hole.
So what have you been up to anyway?
Nothing worth talking about. No.
Yeah.
No. Just usual live life and all that.
Aye. As I say, I'm once I get by this, I'm looking forward to getting out and about again and interacting. As I say, predominantly I'm just going to focus my attention on the unis and the colleges and just keep pressing them. Eventually at some point they've got to open the doors if they know. I mean,
absolutely. I'm going to do my degree burning ceremony this year there.
Good. Good.
I think we'll take it directly to the Chancellor's office, knock on the door.
Yeah.
Give it back to him.
Aye, that'd be good.
Unless he can answer a few simple questions about reality. I don't think it's worth fuck all.
Pete.
Greetings. How you doing?
Not bad.
Greetings.
It's amazing, man, isn't it? That's pretty much instantaneous. I just clicked on the link that you sent, and the minute it came on, and you said, and this is real time, right? This is maybe microseconds delay, but it's pretty much real time. I know you're in Scotland, I'm in Ireland here. So, hello to everybody. And very interesting topic that we're talking about, right? What is gravity? Just to say, Del, a little cryptic, what's the opposite that we'd all associate in a general sense with the opposite of pull? It's a push, right?
Of course.
We got a push and a pull. So.
But there's no opposite, Pete, because that's what I'm talking about. Pull, we're talking about the mechanisms of motion. So pull doesn't come into it. Pull's only a descriptor of direction. So that's what I'm pointing out. The only way for motion to be created is by pressing on something. It's a pressure variance.
Right. Which is a press, which is a push, right?
Aye.
It's a push. There has to be an instigating force, an instigating sort of momentum generator, if you want.
Aye.
And so when it comes to there has to be a distinction here, first of all. I think we'd all agree. You can't relate to what anything that the spinning ball has offered us, right? Because we know it's all nonsense. From the very starting point, right, they have it wrong, which is that the earth beneath us moves, right? So once you sort of stop it there, and everything beyond that is sort of a mental exercise, as Gav was talking about there. Is there that distinction between, that's another area, the distinction between the immaterial, the mental thought, and the deed, the material, right? But once you stop it there, then everything that they have to say beyond that can be viewed with a pinch of salt because they have the basics wrong. So when it comes to reality, which is what we're all trying to work out, right? I guess to the best of our ability, we have loads of time in our hands, right? What else are we going to be thinking about? It's sort of all-encompassing. Everything, I'm just speaking from my own point of view, but I know it has to apply, right? Everything connects, right? So you're trying to ultimately figure out a purpose and everything. So when it comes to questions like, what is gravity? Is gravity something to begin with, Del? I missed everything pretty much until I came in here in the last few minutes of what you were talking about.
Well, I'm doing pointing out the absurdity of the globe model, the concept, and how it invokes, motion towards the earth of other objects, and how what the mechanisms of that would be. And obviously, as I pointed out, there is no pulling. You need a flow of some kind from top to bottom, or the gravity of Earth is somehow casting out something that applies a pressure on these objects in order to bring them towards. So
right. So that's our explanation for everything. Is everything has a sort of intrinsic central pull to a point of zero dimension. Mm-hmm. And I've equated this in my own thinking anyway to the mathematical model, where everything begins with A being a point, right? Mm-hmm. What's the dimension of that point? Well, it's zero dimensionless. So automatically we have that sort of translation between dimensions, what we can relate to in the material world and what is of the mental sort of contribution, let's put it like that. Because listen, after all, what are we, for fuck's sake? What are we? We're a combination of both. The heliocentrists, right? Aristarchus of Samos is credited as being the originator of the heliocentric model. Now, if that's all bullshit nonsense and it's storytelling and scripting, well, then there's a different significance to Aristarchus. But then once you take away the central position of the Earth, you end up with, the Big Bang model and beyond, the multiple universe model, because the basis hasn't been proven, right? Well, I always say this, the Earth, if you can't prove that the Earth is moving, everything stops there. Because, as you've talked about so many times, and look, we all know it, water intrinsic property to it when still will maintain a flatness to it, a levelness to it, right? And this proves that the Earth, or whatever the Earth may be, surface maybe, we have to watch our terms, is flat, so whatever about, all the curvature, all the images we see, when we reduce it back down to whether the Earth is moving or not, then we can stop it there. When we come to real questions, let me just say, when it comes to real questions, then, well, what is really going on a flat and stationary Earth? What is going on? Why do all the skylights appear to move in unison around us on a daily, nightly basis with transitions, throughout the year? These are different questions. And that's, let me just say again, sorry, that's the basic divide, leaving the ball Earth theory behind and seeing it, I guess, ultimately for its symbolic significance, its metaphorical significance. So.
Yeah. John.
Hey there, how are you?
No bad. How you doing?
Good. I just had a quick comment. I was looking at the videos you're showing concerning the Einsteinian model of gravity, so to speak.
Yeah.
One of the things that kind of make me laugh is that when you look at the example that they show you with the fabric and the bowling ball, you can say, okay, well, what's causing the bowling ball to weigh down the fabric to begin with is gravity. That's what it's gonna tell you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if we take that and now say, okay, what is causing the Earth to weigh down this fabric of space to begin with? You can't tell me it's gravity because it's circular reasoning. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's saying like gravity is causing gravity. So the whole thing just got me laughing. Like, how did I ever believe this bullshit to begin with? You know what I mean? It's like, God damn it, they have me good. You know what I mean?
Exactly, mate.
But yeah, just a comment that I wanted to make.
Yeah, good on you, mate, for observing it. It's good to know people can see through the bullshit and they're thinking about it. So.
A grave situation is a pressing situation, right? And we all end up in the grave. So I think if we see beyond the literal and see what we can garner or gain from the story being presented to us, we get closer to answering questions like, what is gravity? What do you think, Del? Is there some sort of prevailing force that orders everything into the way we sort of experience it, however
there's definitely,
the individual mind makes sense to that?
There's definitely, sorry Gav, I know you were going to say something there, but there's definitely a question to be asked of direction. What denotes direction? So that's an intriguing question for me,
Good point, good point. What is Earth? That's the bigger question. So we know what it isn't. Mm-hmm. We know the obnoxiousness of what it isn't. So if everything is inverted in a sense, what can we make of what Earth actually is? And I think, these are deeper questions. And as I said, think about it. Over the years now, have you known any ball Earth antagonists? I call them the Baller Borg, right? Or the ball liars. Have you known any of them to concede anything at any point ever? Mm-hmm. There you go. That says it all, right?
Of course not, because they're just liars, so they're there to reaffirm the bias that they have, you know. So
there's alternative motivations involved, and they all act in unison as well. We don't need to go into that as well, but we have to understand the arena we're in as individuals, because ultimately all there is the individual, right?
Yeah.
All there is you with your thought and your material body. How do those interact and combine, and how does the inside reflect the outside? I think there's a greater story going on here, and ultimately that's what life is about, us coming to these realizations and getting beyond the material that Aristarchus of Samos gave us.
Well, that's what I was saying last night. When people misunderstand me, when I'm talking about this subject, I like to keep it objective. Obviously, there's a metaphysical aspect to life as well, but it's a whole other topic of discussion as far as I'm concerned, but intriguing nonetheless. But Gav, you were going to say something, sorry mate.
I don't know what it was anymore, I've lost the train. But John, tell me, are you a direct realist, my man? Or do you believe in somebody else's representation of the world around you?
Well, it depends what you mean by the direct realist. I think that would be more the label, so to speak, that describes me. But part of the reason for that is that even though I'm fairly young, so to speak, I grew up with people around me who were old school, so they everything had a practical reference to it.
Yeah.
So by the time I came up to the system, so to speak, it was kind of hard for me to fit in, you know, because I already had all these questions like, but that doesn't make sense. And people look at you like, what do you mean doesn't make sense? Just don't think about it. You know what I mean? It's like, to me, it's like, I identify a lot with people who can, you know, who can relate to me in a practical fashion. So
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And what brought you to the topic? What brought you to not believing in the globe absurdity? What got you out of the cult, man? Tell me.
It's a lot of factors that fell into place. You know, I usually enjoy philosophical discussions. You know, I used to hang out in these places, and one of my specialties was dismantling religion. You know, I figure myself, I always talk to religious people and, you know, try to kind of question them on they believe, like, why do you believe this? Little did I know, I was holding a religion myself, you know, and it was an empowering situation I thought I was in, meaning like I don't have any beliefs that I have to defend. Things are what they are to me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when the topic came across,
nature needs no defending from you. She does this
Exactly.
fine. You know, she'll hold just fine against the mental nonsense of men, you know. If people try to, you know, to postulate absurd things about nature, you know, sorry, she'll prove them wrong every fucking day. Every minute of the day, do you know what I mean?
Well, when the topic first came to my attention was my girlfriend, actually. She was like, you need to look at this. But I know that she's sometimes not very good at explaining things, but to me it's like there has to be a reason why she's showing me this, because I can't just say that this is ridiculous, I'm not gonna look at it. And then I came across the videos that everybody comes across with the dome and everything, and that was kind of turning me off because it had a kind of a religious, you know, a religious connotation to it, you know what I mean? Like the whole God and thing, I'm like, oh my God, not this. But I stuck to it, and then the penny dropped with the whole water situation. I'm like, that makes complete sense, you know what I mean? And
the penny dropped, yeah. Would that be gravity, would it?
No pun intended, you know, no pun intended. But the whole thing, and I work a lot with architectural programs, you know, and those 3D modeling things that you wouldn't believe how easy it is to create those same rotating globe with, you know, the water and everything is incredibly easy.
Yeah.
And the irony is that every single one of these programs that I use to model buildings or whatever consists of an infinite plane, so to speak. So if you're gonna make a bridge, it doesn't matter how long the bridge is. It assumes that the surface on which you're gonna make that bridge is level. You know what I mean? There's no curvature, there's not anything. And I'm like, God damn it, why is it that it's this way, right? And one of my 3D modeling class, there was this time where I had to make basically like an environment, so to speak. And the teachers, they're showing us, and what he did was he created a plane, right? Started with a plane. The plane would hold the buildings and everything, right? And then, I'm not saying that this is how things actually are, but then he created a dome around the plane. And onto that dome, he pasted, you know, the sky and clouds and everything. You can actually move the picture. So the picture is being projected onto the dome, so that the dome looks like like the sky, so to speak. And then you put your buildings in there, you add some couple of lights, you take a picture, and it looks just like the real fucking thing. You know what I mean? I'm like, God damn it. So at no point in time do you assume that the ground beneath your feet is anything but level. You know what I mean? So I'm like, God damn, this is something to think about, because there's some serious repercussions with, you know, that realization. And
exactly.
A lot of people don't see it that way, and they think it's like just a debate, and so to speak. I'm like, God, no, it's more serious than that, because things like global warming and shit like that, the basis for that is an assumption. You know, the assumption that we know where we live, and we know what the fuck this is, and resources are limited, and therefore we must tell each other. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is some serious shit.
Yeah.
So I became a philosopher since then, so to speak. Like 2 years ago, I think, Gav, you talked about Thomas Reed.
Yeah.
The Inquiry into the Human Mind. Yeah, I have read that book, and for those of you who haven't read it, there's an audio version on YouTube that you can find. I've listened to it to the point where I think I understand exactly the points that he was trying to make, and it's a fascinating subject to begin with, and that's what I'm here today, I guess.
I think what I'm hearing, and just the idea that if you stand firm from the ground up, right, and base your evidence on the physical, world that's objective to all of us, instead of coming from a mental top, it's like coming top down from a kind of mental perception of the world and trying to explain all the visible stuff that deny then the physics, right? So, you shouldn't do that. You can always stand firm on the ground and refute any of that nonsense, right? From the ground up.
Exactly.
So, practical and demonstrable.
I have had some, discussions with people, and it's always easy to have a discussion because a couple of things I picked up from watching this channel is to stick to what you can prove to both you and the individuals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was this time. There's a video on YouTube where a guy was making a water level. He was showing you how you can make a level with basically a bucket of water and a transparent tube and a stick, because he was trying to level a foundation.
Yeah.
And I'm watching the video. I'm like, okay, this guy understands exactly, how these substances work. He's telling you what level is and everything, right? So I make a comment and saying, so how can it be a globe, right? Immediately the guy jumps in and he's like, well, what's your definition of level? And I took a frame from his video and said, you just defined it, right? This is the definition of level. To make the story short, the guy started to talk about, well, in a planetary level, it's different because the Earth and the Sun. I'm like, God damn it! Where have you been to these places? You know what I mean? Like, you were just the man explaining how a fucking water level works and how you build a foundation, and now you're talking shit about things we can demonstrate to each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me, it was like either he's onto it or he's just a fucking lunatic.
It's the denial, isn't it? It's they understand these things, they understand the principles and what they're espousing, and then as soon as you question that fundamental belief, they'll start panicking and trying to cover it up and justify
exactly.
it.
So you would think someone with that kind of knowledge would say, hold on a second, this I know this to be true. You know what I mean? I cannot just discard it because I read something or my teacher told me something. You know what I mean?
In fairness, John, it's a process for everybody. So if you're coming from a sort of a trusting history, which we all did, we were always told,
right.
I speak for many, no matter how things are right now, we're at the sort of the pinnacle of advancements. Things get better or whatever, but compared to times past, we're in a sort of advanced stage. Now, when the context changes about everything, and I was going to ask you, John, as well, because we all recognize it. There's different layers of they, right? Because first of all, you have the they, your family, your friends. First of all, you have yourself, right? But when we all came to matter to question it, first of all, it was a battle against our whole history. So we can understand someone hearing the thought for the first time and treating it in a genuine way. We can understand this outburst and this violent objection to this obnoxious. My neighbor said it actually. I don't need to keep my voice down and say everything, but my neighbor said that he, in order to contemplate even what I'm saying, he'd have to think back to the 15th century and how they thought back then. So automatically it's destroyed. The argument is destroyed before it's even entertained. But it's a different matter. Yeah.
But now it's worse. Sometimes it's like you can't have that conversation without somebody already throwing a label onto you and just making a whole bunch of assumptions. And I don't have much patience sometimes. It's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, if we're going to talk, we can talk. But
that's the problem with muddying the waters, and that's what I've always spoke about, why people throw out these straw man, adopting straw man cartoons and concepts. They've just left a concept in a cartoon and then they adopt these other ones and they run about, presenting it to people when there's absolutely no necessity to do such. And it's just as you say, that's what you come up against it. You're just trying to have an honest discussion with them about their belief, their claim, and they're constantly throwing, straw men at you and trying to label you with the same thing. But that's how propaganda works.
Another thing that I'm noticing is that people are coming up with this concept or this idea when you're having this discussion that nothing can be objective. I'm like, okay, well, if that is true, we might as well just throw away every science that we think we have. You know what I mean? Because every science has to rest upon a set of principles, facts that we know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And these things are indifferent of our thoughts or what we think.
Yeah.
So you are a direct realist then, John. Sorry.
Pardon me?
Couldn't resist that. You are a direct realist then.
I've been studying the topic for a while and just thinking about these things. I'm just like, you just say like nothing is subjective. You know what I mean?
These people that say that.
We understand that. Sorry, Dal. We understand that all science is corrupted at this stage. Whatever the true history of everything is not organic, right? So it all comes back to. And I meant to say this to Gavin. I mean, I understand. There's a limited amount of time to say things. But when it comes back to the basic questions, we have to define terms like nature or Mother Nature.
Yeah.
And have it in its proper context. But they're, again, deeper questions. They separate the flat earth group, we don't like using terms and labels, but from the board, right? These are the questions as to what is. So, getting back to what is gravity, these are deeper questions we must deal on our own as individuals with, because you can't talk to any fucker about any of this stuff. I don't care who you are. This is going beyond the beyond, right? Because it's so adverse to everything, pretty much everyone else, everything. So anyway, that's my ultimate point. I hope you understand it as well.
Mm-hmm. Aye.
Is that waffle, Del? I'm sorry, it comes across as waffle, but it's the ultimate question.
But with the people. Sorry, I was just going to say the people. These same people that say nothing's objective are the same people that are trying to tell you that 4.5 billion years ago such and such happened, and fucking monkeyfish squirrels adapted and you became you. I mean, these are the same. This is
exactly. They dismantling the whole argument by saying nothing's objective. Then why are we even bothering talking to each other? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Which is why, for me, it always comes to demonstration, practicality. Where's the substance? Show me what you're talking about.
Right.
I've got one good question that. Sorry, Pete, hold on. I've got one good question that I quite like asking people, Dylan. Do people believe that if you've got a level standing water anywhere, right, in any scale and at any elevation, then all that water is parallel to each other, if you like, right? On a fundamental Euclidean plane, right?
Yeah.
And if you then ask people that, do you believe that is true, or do you believe that the gutters around your house, circulate in great circles, right? Or that you've got curved shelves in your house, right? And that's the way the geometry would possibly work, if that was a liquid substance, right? So, I mean, it's possible.
Exactly. And
ask them that.
Yeah. And just as John, you were saying about the computer programs, that's based on Euclidean plane principles as well. That's the foundation of how they operate.
Most people don't care, though, you see. So what the ball has done is, our science has done, is taken advantage of people's imagination. So they've offered up a complete picture. That's what the blue marble represented for the first time.
Yeah.
It gave us a perspective within the grander universe.
God's
eye
view.
People have been filled in. Now, when you wipe that slate clean, then you start asking a whole series of new questions, which I think is ultimately the point, right?
Mm-hmm. And so you've got to eradicate it, and the thing is as well, people drag in components and aspects of the previous belief and try and make it fit onto a new ground of questioning, which is why we get the dragging in of Spaceballs above us. If it's a flat plane, then we must have Spaceballs circulating the flat plane. I mean, So
I'll tell you this, Del. And just all things for a reason, I guess, but everything by chance as well. But I was talking to a group of about, I'd say, 15 or 20 school children, or 16 or 17-year-old children, right? And just on the off chance, one of their friends had died. But I was just mentioning, as I tried to do, about the possibility. Have you heard the possibility? It might be flat. And what do you think of the idea? But out of the 20, maybe 3 of them were would describe themselves as flat earthers, but every one of them had heard of the possibility, and none of them sort of didn't take it seriously, So a little bit of sort of encouragement. You know this yourself from dealing with people. But the point being that the children will sort of lead us home in a sense, because they're exposed to all of these ideas. We have to overcome the conditioning throughout the past, and then
it's a generational thing, just like how the globe was implemented, done through generations. You get one generation to accept any concept or idea, assume it to be true, and then they will pass it on, and that's just the same for reversing.
What do you think about, sorry, John. What do you think about people who flat Earth, whatever, non-globe earthers, forget the labels, right? Who don't tell their children about the nature of Earth?
That's none of my business, to be honest with you, Pete. That's up to them. I'm not going to judge them on their reasoning. I can by me.
In general, right?
Aye, well, that's up to them. If they want to be dishonest with their own, then that's their choice,
Not good, right? We agree. It's not good.
No.
It's not good.
Sorry, John, what were you going to say there?
I think the least you can tell your children, I mean, you don't have to tell them it's this or it's that, but the least you can do is, when it comes to this, space images and things like that, the best you can do is tell them, listen, you have to treat these things with a certain level of skepticism. You know what I mean? You don't have any way of confirming or denying whether these things are true.
Yeah.
No, we do.
That's why for me.
No. What I mean is that the images that you're being given. You know what I mean? You have no way of saying, okay, let me go and confirm whether this is true, because you don't have access to these quote unquote rockets or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you have to treat. I would say, okay, I'm going to treat it with extreme skepticism.
That's it for me.
I can't
after sending your children to the school where they get all this information, and we're also after giving the children our television to create these impressions in the first place.
The thing for me is offering the next generations the tools of learning properly. And that's what's usually important to me. It's not about imposing beliefs on them or mantric statements. They have to have the tools to be able to discern for themselves, make their own choice, their own decisions.
Right, and that's what I'm alluding to, right? Instead of just saying it's this or that, because a lot of people who call themselves, I don't know, flat earthers or whatever, they going straight left with it. You know what I mean? This is why I think the way you do it there, which is stripping the subject of any, religion or whatever, that's the way to treat this type of topic, because so many triggers just, to try to have a conversation.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
If you can, for me, it's about.
We love our children more than we love ourselves, right? And we introduce them to the system that they find themselves in the midst of. So in that greater sense, sorry, Del, I appreciate that. I just wanted to say that.
I know you're eager to speak, Pete, but
here's that ultimate responsibility. So
I know, but
sorry.
Aye. Well, let's just have a wee discussion. Nobody's here to proselytise to anybody. I forget what I was going to say now. That's what happens, Pete, when you constantly jump in. People forget, their contribution.
It's commentary on the same issue, right? It's the ultimate issue. That's all. There's an artificiality to this engagement, and you can be sure if we were all sitting around, the conversation would flow a little differently because of the nuances that we'd all pick up on. So I apologize if I come across, but I'm opinionated, and so step back a little bit.
No, I was listening was it Friday? I think you talked about the flat Earth being dead, and all these models, being put to the grave. And I'm jubilating as well. I'm cheering on. So the quicker people throw away all these mental objects and start from the ground up, with basic stuff and that we can agree on, then the quicker it'll get out of this mess.
It's a latching onto the real world demonstrable facts. and representing those and being steadfast in it when you're having the interactions with people, that's where you cut to the chase. That's where you can remove all the unnecessary rubbish, and then your interaction can be useful with them, you know. But the muddying of the waters was deliberate. It's how propaganda works. Everybody knows that. You know, and then people adopt it, they repeat it, they regurgitate it, and before you know it, the whole place is a fucking wash with domes and pizza dishes and fucking gods of all shapes and sizes, and you've got people like us that are like, you know, that's the point I was going to make.
One of the things that gets me is that people speak the most ridiculous nonsense with the most confidence, like,
right.
Yes, it is wrong.
That's it.
And it's just laughable.
And I've remembered what I was going to say, John, in regards to what you were talking about. That method for me, I don't think Gav, you pinpointed it as a Socratic type of method. And that's always been my way. If I can question it to the point of breaking it, or I can find a contradiction within it, then I know that it's bullshit, you know? And that seems to be
pointing out the absurdity, right? Discerning the bullshit. That's it.
That for me is the most potent method of discernment. That's how I find what's what. You know, I always have done.
And you have to meet it. You have to meet these things head on, because it's the only way to diffuse the situation. There. Otherwise, you know, it never goes away. Right? You might as well just ridicule it right there and then if somebody tells you a fucking yarn. You know? Unless it's all just in jest and joking, you know, and then it's a great, you know, great fun.
I would say
I'm going to knock off. It's been good speaking to you all, eh?
I am.
I was just going to say, just before you go, Gav,
thanks all for the chat. I'm also, I need.
Just before you go, Gav, I would say for the individual, that is the ultimate quest here, is to decide who we are, making all of these determinations. Now we've left behind what officialdom has presented to us about the greater story of our life, so that leaves a great big gap. So understanding that basic starting point, or coming to terms maybe with that basic starting point, might change everything.
Well, that's what we talk about. We talk about it all the time, Pete. Being a direct realist, asking questions, basing things on your experience and having practical references for claims that are being made. That pretty much sums up everything we've ever put out there, you know? So aye.
Different layers to truth, Del, right? So once you come to flat earth...
No, when it comes to objectivity, there's no different layers, Pete. When it comes to objectivity, it's cold, hard, factual, demonstrable. There is no layers to it. If I shoot you with an AK-47...
What is nature? What is
doesn't
Mother
need
Nature?
anybody's defence, Pete. Nothing at all. Right?
No.
Truth will be honest. Honest one.
Well, I've
I'm off
spoken
you
about
guys. Easy.
Gav, cheers, mate. Cheers, Gav. I've spoken about this before, Pete. This is why I always use it. Nature, because people define nature as in what the globular Earth, Mother Nature, all these mantric statements. And well, what's your reference for nature? If I understand this as a construct, then it's no natural. But because we're within it, people are calling it nature, the natural world. But if you accept intellectually it's a construct, then it's something that's out with the real realm of what you would call nature. This is a construct, so your reference for nature is based on what? So
Well, Gav is actually the man who mentioned Mother Nature tonight. And this is why I asked the question. I agree with you, absolutely, Del. And I'm glad you used the term construct instead of the buzz term at the minute. Elon Musk gives it to us. I reckon Seth MacFarlane plays the role of Elon Musk. But he talks about simulation theory. So is there a difference between a construct and a simulation?
When Gav, I understand when Gav and myself use the word like the natural world or nature, we're talking about the mechanistic applications, how things function within this area, this realm that we exist in. That's why I always use the term loosely when I say nature. But what I'm meaning by that, and what Gav's meaning by that, is the objective reality and its function. What's the relationship between objects? What's the cause and effect relations between things? That's what I'm talking about.
And, well, to quote Gav, or to maybe slightly misquote him, Mother Nature will cut us all down to size, and this implies that there's a certain... Listen, look, when we've left the scientism behind, right, they've given us definitive answers as to our true natures, the evolutionary theory, which will go hand in hand with all Earth theory, right? So when it comes down to true nature, how can we say what is true? We can appreciate what we experience around us, but if we don't have the proper context, where does that leave us, Del?
That's what direct realism is about, P. I don't know why we talk in circles. It's like you just totally misunderstand us, and it causes this conflict all the time. You doing this deliberately. Because
No,
when he's referencing, well, listen
no,
carefully, Pete. Listen to how this is elevating you, because you just don't have the ability to fucking listen. When he says Mother Nature, when we're talking about that's about objectivity. The objective reality presents itself for what it is, and it doesn't mean that it's an entity or a god or a being or anything like that. It's just objects. And forget it, Pete. I can't bother.
Yeah, but hang on. This is about what we can all sort of work out, or maybe
Pete, you're just Pete. I don't know what you're talking about now, because you're talking riddles. You're talking in riddles, Pete. You're just talking in riddles.
Come on, man.
Pete,
listen. Answer me this then. Answer me this question. What have you replaced the vacuum of space with in your?
Fuck all, Pete. We've been through this before. We knew you're just trolling the fuck off, son.
Trolling anything. Man.
Fuck off, Pete.
If you're talking about direct
Pete,
reality.
Fuck off.
Then you have defined reality, man.
Who's trying to define? What do you mean define it? Who's trying to define
you're talking
it?
About. Why are you being so aggressive towards me for?
Because you're a trolling piece of shit. Pete, you're not clever enough, son. Right? You're just not clever enough.
I'm not trying to get one up on anybody.
You think you're something, Pete.
And
fuck
let me
off.
get it out, please. Let me ask my question.
Now it's degraded into rubbish. John, I can only apologise because we've got Pete. I knew I shouldn't have given him the opportunity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see it. But anyways, I kind of have to run away anyways.
No worries.
Maybe some other time I'll come back. All right?
Appreciate it,
Thanks for having me.
Cheers, my man. Take it easy.
Take it
Cheers,
easy,
cheers,
John.
John. So, I don't want to give that too much attention, you know, but it's the same old crap, you know. Everybody knows, you know, when we use the terms of nature and Mother Nature, we're talking about objectivity. Know that it's an entity or any of these things. Doesn't have to be defined as a whole fucking thing. You know, it's been stated here before. For me, I highly doubt that you can. You would have to be out with, you know, whatever the prime mover is to understand it as a whole, and I think that's an impossibility. The only thing we can, you know, understand is the effects that we're a part of. And, you know, we're talking about objectivity, you know, nature, that just means cold heart, objective, you know, that doesn't have any subjectivity in it, you know, that's subject to our wishes, wants, desires, any of that stuff. Objects, relationship between objects and their interactions. Simple. Pete knows that. Anyhow, it's just a pity that it's going to descend into that with fucking nonsense. So, appreciated. Cheers to John, Gav, everybody else who's been here. I'll be back very, very soon. Take care of yourselves, people. Bye-bye now.